Crash issue 31 had a cover that showed their Play and Tips columnist Hannah Smith mud wrestling a monster. This referenced an argument Crash were having with the magazine Computer and Video Games, with Crash claiming that they had the only female Play and Tips columnist, but CMVG claiming they had done this first with their Melissa Ravenflame character. However, there is some doubt as to whether Melissa Ravenflame was a real person. This was another pretty good month for games with 5 Crash smashes. Let's see what they were. This month starts with 3 games from the Adventure Trail column, 2 in joint 9th place with 85%. The first is Mafia Contract 2 from Atlantis. This is a follow-up to Mafia Contract, originally reviewed in issue 12, although not reaching the top 10 in that issue. This is a Mafia-themed game set in Chicago. You're the #1 advisor and bodyguard to Don Coppola. Your plan is to seize control of the city by killing rival gang leader Vito Rossi and Don Coppola himself. Crash described this game as better than its predecessor. They found the graphics to be a step up, puzzles and the story link in them to be a real pleasure. Although a crude game, the theme, story and interpretation distance this from the usual run-of-the-mill releases. Although finding it a little easy, they summarised this as a really good game for the price of £1.99. It's a quilled text adventure with graphics provided by the illustrator. Although the game does have graphics, they're generally slow to draw, and being initially set inside a building are rather dull pictures of walls and doors. Although the setting of the game is original, it's rather frustrating not understanding the examine command, and the first couple of problems seem to mainly involve unlocking doors. Although the game tries to create tension at the start with you budding under attack, it doesn't really succeed. This probably won't be a game I'll come back to. Also in 9th place with 85% is Rebel Planet by AdventureSoft. This text adventure is based on the book of the same name, one of the Fighting Fantasy series of books. You play as a merchant on a rebel spacecraft, and have to find intelligence to enable you to defeat the Arcadian Empire by destroying the Queen computer. Crash liked the extensive vocabulary, the powerful examine command, and the parser, which understood more than just the usual verb-noun format. They praised the decorative graphics and sound plot, giving it scores in the high 80s in all categories, and summarising it as very good. Compared to the fairly standard quill games available at the time, this adventure demonstrates many novel features. It starts from the very first screen with the view from your spacecraft animated. Through the game it does a good job of world building, things happen independently of what you're doing, robots move around, UFOs approach your craft. The game appears to have reasonably good vocabulary and responds to the examine command well. I'd not played this game before, but had read the Fighting Fantasy gamebook on which it was based. If you like adventures or remember the book, this is well worth a look. Next we have 2 games in joint 7th place. The first, with 86%, is Master of Magic from Mastertronic. Although not a text adventure, this role-playing game was reviewed in the Adventure Trail column. Your quest is to retrieve the lost amulet of immortality for a wizard called Thelric. Crash felt that this was not a bad game at all for the £2.99 price tag. On the whole, they found the look of the game appealing, particularly the pictures of objects and creatures you encounter, but were not impressed by the display of your surrounding terrain. They found it easy to play, but difficult to play well, and concluded that it would be a game that grows on you and well worth the asking price. This is a Spectrum variant of the roguelike games, and it's pretty good fun in terms of gameplay, although let down slightly by the fact that your character, objects and antagonists are just barely more than a couple of pixels in size. The game has frustrating moments when you're being attacked, and the game doesn't appear to give you an option to attack back or cast a spell on your attacker. But it's a game that's got a very good feel to it, especially with touches like the way you can only see a bit of the dungeon at any one time. It's a good game in the same vein as Out of the Shadows from issue 11, or Swords and Sorcery from issue 24, and worth a look if you're into RPGs. Also in joint 7th place with 86% is Hijack from Electric Dreams. In this game you play the head of the Hijack division based in a US government agency. A terrorist group has hijacked a vehicle, and your job is to corral various other members of your organisation to track them down and negotiate. Crash found the game superb, with good graphics and easy to use controls. A couple of reviewers found it boring to begin with and difficult to get into, but found that once you do, it becomes addictive and intriguing. They didn't find it quite up to the standard of Electric Dream's previous game Spin Dizzy, but loved the originality of the game and recommended that you don't miss it. This certainly looks like a good game, somewhat reminded me of Spy vs Spy from issue 19, but quite different in gameplay. The idea of selecting a character and then getting a menu to request they do stuff is interesting. There's an element of this that seems similar to the Fourth Protocol, although it seems a bit pointless that you can select characters that aren't there. I like the overall look and feel, although it's difficult to feel much agency when you tell characters to do something and they just say, I'll get onto it. There's an element of planning and strategy, so it's probably worth taking a look at and having a few goes if that's your thing. In 6th place with 88% is Action Reflex from Mirrorsoft, written by Christian Urquhart, author of Transversion from issue 1. This is a ball game with a difference. You play a ball trapped in a series of 3 mazes. Your mission is to escape, avoiding a variety of static and mobile obstacles. One reviewer compared this to Bounder from issue 29, viewed from the side, although found that this game had a depth to it that should keep any arcade player at the Spectrum for ages. They liked the nice graphical touches, or they found that there's an element of colour clash in the more colourful screens. They found the game playable and addictive, although sometimes frustrating. It was a combination of old ideas creating something original, and on the whole a very good game. I'm not quite as convinced about this game as Crash was. I can see the comparisons to Bounder. Both games are frustrating in their own way, but Bounder was far superior to this. The screens are all pretty basic, but the way in which your ball moves is just too rigid, so the game doesn't flow very well. It's a bit of fun for a few goes, trying to work out the optimum way to bounce past the obstacles, but I just can't really see it having any lasting appeal. In 5th place with 90% and a crash smash is Pyracurse by Houston. With an original working title of Sphinx, this is an Egyptian-themed isometric 3D adventure where you're able to control 3 different characters and a dog. Your task is to rescue explorer Sir Pericles Pemberton Smythe. I always used to call this Pyracurse, but given that it has a pyramid theme, Pyracurse is probably the correct name. Crash described this as a game that followed in the footsteps of Houston's earlier Avalon and Dragon Talk, so felt it may not appeal if you didn't enjoy those games. They found it a fun game with great graphics and excellent gameplay, but felt that the sheer size would make it daunting to solve. One reviewer found it hard to get into and criticised the lack of ability to rotate the viewing angle, but generally they all summarised it as a rewarding and absorbing arcade adventure. I like the theme of this game and the atmosphere it creates. It reminds me most of Nightshade, the smooth scrolling 3D area that you can explore. Perhaps the first 3D isometric game that I recall that gives you the option of playing multiple characters. This gives it some extra appeal. I do wonder how much lasting appeal this game would have, but nevertheless it's worth a play. The next Crash Smash with 91% is Cauldron II from Palace. This is a follow-up to the original Cauldron game from issue 18, but in this game the witch of the original game is the antagonist. You play a pumpkin with a mission to steal the golden broomstick from the witch's castle and defeat the witch. Crash described this as a good game with superbly drawn and beautifully animated graphics, offering a lot more than its prequel. The game has a brilliant combination of lots of colours but limited colour clash. All reviewers found the game tricky to start with and one that would require practice, but nevertheless it was a playable and addictive game that was well worth the money. This game is considerably different in feel and gameplay to the original Cauldron, but bears some resemblance to that game in the use of your energy represented by magic, which depletes as you hit things and fire. Perhaps the biggest comparison I can draw is with Action Reflex, also reviewed in this issue. Very similar in the control mechanism to that game, although I feel that Cauldron II gets it right, offering you more precision in the control of your bounces, a more interesting environment to explore and more to interact with. Although still a challenging game, this is not one I've played before, but certainly found fun and one I would like to play more. In 3rd place, a Crash Smash with 92% is Heartland, written by Odin and published by Firebird. In this game you've been transported into Heartland with a mission to find 6 pages of a book and ultimately rescue the people of the Netherworld. Along the way the evil minions of Midas attempt to stop you. Crash felt that, like most Odin games, this was very playable and immensely compelling. They found the graphics impressive, with plenty of colour and superb animation. They described the whole look of the game as very smart. They felt that arcade adventurers would love it, but shoot 'em up fanatics may find it boring after a while. But on the whole they strongly recommended this game. The game starts well with a title screen that's very impressive both graphically and musically. The game itself makes incredibly good use of colour, the animation and sound effects are just right. Whilst the general theme of move between rooms shooting antagonists is not really new, this game does it well. It took me a little while to grasp the mechanic of moving through doors, but once you get the hang of this the game opens up. This game looks like one that would be good to explore further, and one that a map may be useful for. Definitely worth a play. In 2nd place this month is another Crash Smash from Firebird. This is Rebelstar. This is a follow-up game to Rebelstar Raiders, a game that was reviewed in the very first frontline column back in Crash issue 9, but wasn't given a rating so didn't appear in my top 10 for that month. This is the turn-based strategy game with you controlling a group of raiders trying to break into an enemy complex and disable the main computer. It's playable as a 1-player or 2-player game, each variant loaded separately from tape. Sean Masterson, reviewing this game, was pleased to see a follow-up to Rebelstar Raiders. He described this game as, for the price, the best strategy game he's reviewed in 10 months of writing the frontline column for Crash. He took his hat off to Firebird for introducing this improved version of an old favourite back onto the market at a reasonable price. His concluding remarks were, "I can find no fault with it." For a turn-based strategy game, this is perhaps one of the most straightforward to pick up. It put me somewhat in mind of issue 17's Shadowfire, but without needing to deal with icons. The actions you can take are clearly laid out on screen and the game is responsive. Like many strategy games, this doesn't feel as smooth as an arcade game, as you're always moving from square to square. Nevertheless, the top-down view of the enemy complex works well. If you're into strategy but the usual war games aren't your thing, this may be one to take a look at. Finally, in 1st place, a smash with 94%, is Bobby Bearing from The Edge. This is an isometric 3D arcade exploration game, not dissimilar to Spin Dizzy from issue 29. In this you take the role of a ball bearing called Bobby and have to explore a maze of rooms to find and rescue your younger brothers by pushing them back to the entrance. Crash described this as derivative of Spin Dizzy, but nevertheless as a heap of fun to play. They are impressed by the way in which Bobby rebounds off all manners of obstacles in a convincing manner. Although challenging at first, as many of the screens look similar, playing for a while helps a logical map to form. Another reviewer liked the character of Bobby, superbly animated with a smiling gob that was really endearing. On the whole, they summarised this as a technically stunning game which is addictive and fun to play, recommended it to everyone, especially Marble Madness and Spin Dizzy freaks. This is a game I remember well from back in the day. Although incredibly similar to Spin Dizzy, this game has a touch of extra polish and smoothness to make this the definitive Marble Madness inspired 3D maze exploration game. Everything comes together well: the graphics, spot sound effects, the physics of your ball, and the level of challenge. This is a definitive all-time Spectrum classic and one that I highly recommend. If you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to see more videos about retro computing from Logic Retro.